Hey, everybody, welcome to episode one of our new show, Automation Tech Talk. This is a show, unlike the Automation Podcast, where we sit down and we do a deep dive on a product. This is a show where we're more a relaxed live stream where we're sitting down with experts to talk about technology and something I've wanted to do for a long time. And we're trying to move the Automation Morning Show over to this kind of same software and just to make it easier for us to produce more and more shows and get more and more information out to you, the audience. And so this is not currently going out to the audio audience, but we hope to release this later in the day to our great podcast audio only audience. But right now, we are live streaming to Facebook, to LinkedIn, to YouTube, to X or Twitter, and to Rumble. So hi to everybody who's watching live. And I haven't. This is again brand new for me, so if you have comments, throw them in there, and we'll definitely try to take a look at them. But in any case, let me bring in our guests here. The first guest I have is John DeTellem. He's from Siemens. He's been on the show many times. He's one of our go-to experts. And John, thank you for coming back on with us today.
Absolutely.
And new to our shows is Bryan Lilly. Bryan, could you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Absolutely. Thank you, Shawn. My name is Bryan Lilly. I have been with Siemens coming up on 17 years. I started with Siemens on a little product that would eventually become the S7-1200 as a tester. I eventually moved to the product development for the S7-1200, and I focused on things like Profinet and user communication. I eventually moved to some of our development on the S7-1500. I moved into development in areas like TIA Portal and Portal adjacent. And as of right now, I am a product owner in our Virtual PLC S7-1500.
Awesome. Well, I think a lot of us who's been in the industry for a while, we've worked with a lot of different products, from emulators to simulators to way back in the 90s, soft PLCs became, and I know it's a trademarked by Soft PLC, the company, but software-based PLCs. And there are a lot of things going on today with simulators and emulators and 3D emulation and machine emulation. So, and of course, Siemens has some great products too, like PLC Sim. We teach in our courses what a great simulator that is that comes with TIA Portal. So I think there's a lot of people like myself coming in here from different directions. So would you mind taking a moment and try to really tell us what the vPLC is?
So in this case, the vPLC is focused on creating a true S7-1500. That S7-1500, it's not a simulator. This is true control. This is a native PLC, but fully hardware independent. So you are not in this case, we are working within our Edge platform, which we can get into some of the details there. But we are a native S7-1500. Everything about us acts like an S7-1500. It's not an act. We are an S7-1500, a PLC. But in this case, the virtualization is simply taking the need for that dedicated hardware that John is showing us there occasionally. That is the part that we're removing here. And in this case, we're allowing you to locate that, whether it's on, for instance, Siemens makes IPCs. Those you can run it on potentially if it's edge enabled. But if you have your own, let's say, VMware cluster or something, you can also run it there. That's bringing your own hardware and running in this case, our control solution as a native S7-1500.
So for maybe like an OEM, right, who is shipping a small machine, he may want to stay with an S7-1200 because it's very affordable. The software is very affordable. He's used to using it. But I can see some larger applications where leveraging the advantages of backup for VMware, right?
Sure.
Especially if it's an application that's talking to a lot of other PLCs or talking to a lot of I/O, there may be some advantages there. Where have you seen kind of like some sweet spots for this? I know it's early days of the product, but where have you seen some sweet spots for this where maybe, your other PLCs work, but the vPLC is a great fit?
Well, and that's a really good way of putting that. We are a part of the bigger somatic portfolio. There's plenty of we have software controllers. We have TCPUs. We have lots of different things that enable our customers to work the way they intend to work. In this case, the 1500V, so the 1517V, is very highly targeted on an end customer, especially those who might want, for instance, to bring their own hardware. In this case, that might be an IPC of some kind, or in this case, maybe it's a customer that specifically says, I have my own server concept. I want my control logic to be run in my way on our schedule. And in this case, for that IT oriented customer, I think we're offering a distinct opportunity. For an edge specific customer, a customer already using kind of our Somatic Edge platform, this is also an opportunity for them, especially in the sense that maybe you already have like an edge enabled IPC. This is an opportunity for you to add real control to something you already have. So this is also potentially a cost savings for that customer.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Now, can you tell us a little bit about like what's required? Like let's say I purchased a vPLC, right?
Sure.
What is the environment that I'm not just going to put this on my Windows 10 PC, right?
No, and generally speaking, we would tell you, so you would need to have some type of an edge enabled device. Now that could be like a Siemens IPC. There are other vendors that also make edge enabled IPCs. Or in this case, you could use what we call the industrial edge virtual device. Now this is like a VM that very specifically enables you to have an edge environment, but on your own hardware. Now that could be an IPC, that could be a blade server, that could be almost anything. I mean, that's the nature of being hardware independent. Is we have no ability to engage and say it must be this. So you're bringing us the hardware, which means you're bringing us the performance. So for us, that would be something like requiring you to have we would advise you to have something like a hypervisor. So in the IT world, this would be something to make sure that, for instance, we can prioritize things that are necessary for a PLC to work in a real-time deterministic environment.
Excellent. John, I'm going to throw it to you to ask some questions because you know more about this product than I do.
Yeah. Well, I like, exactly what he just mentioned is the fact that we're taking the PLC out of this device that might be on my machine for an OEM or in the plant for the other guys, and fundamentally, making it independent and putting the control in a place where it's potentially easier to manage, more cost effective to manage. Like he mentioned, we have our flavors of IPCs. I got a whole slew of demos here today with me, just like you do, Shawn. But what I see is the potential of really maturing how I manage my PLC into an environment that is more reliable and consistent with what I'm doing with other PC technologies or industrial PC technologies that I want to do in my plant. So it really does kind of excite me to see where we're headed with this technology. It is based on the industrial edge ecosystem. Fundamentally, the strategy that we've been pushing out with the Siemens Industrial Edge is the concept of apps that reside in the ecosystem of the edge solution from Siemens. And what they've done is, with all the opportunities of other things that can be done on the app, data collection and other tool sets for performance insights and information, is they've realized, hey, let's put the control into this system. So now I move my IO information into the edge ecosystem, and I have my virtual PLC realized on that blade server that might be either at the production line, or in the IT department. So I think it's pretty significantly interesting stuff, and an opportunity for us to kind of evolve to the next generation.
I had a question, Bryan, that, if you think about a 1517, that is a fast PLC.
Sure.
I mean,
Because of the hardware that it's on. Yeah.
What's that? Yeah, the hardware, the 1518, once you get up there, right? Not to say that the 1200 in the lower ends, but, as I teach in my course, the higher you go up, the faster the performance is, which I find is unique compared to other systems. And so like the nanoseconds it takes to scan a coil or something is so very fast. How does the vPLC, and I know people deploy it on different hardware, so you can't answer it, but is there a hardware platform that allows you with the vPLC to approach those same speeds as the hardware PLC, or am I missing the point?
I know it, and part of the thing here is that what's so unique about saying bring your own device a little bit, like bring your own platform, is that on a certain level, you're 100% correct. The 1517 is a very fast platform, but it's limited by being passively cooled, right? I mean, on a certain level, you can only run a processor so fast before it simply can't run any faster just because of cooling reasons.
Yeah.
In this case, if I've got a blade server with a 4 or a 5 gigahertz like Xeon or something, I can run that core as fast as I want to run it, right? I mean, at some point, it's actively cooled. It's a very different system concept. In the same way that certain parts of our own IPC line, like the software controller, can run things faster than a 1570 because they're actively cooled. This is the same basic concept. In this case, though, we're taking that as a native PLC. So the 1517, by its nature, is a PLC. It's not a software controller, right?
Sure.
This is a native PLC as well. So in terms of how you would use it in Portal, we're making that process very straightforward because it is truly just a PLC. And yeah, in terms of performance, obviously it's kind of what you bring to us. Like the performance in this case, especially related to like executing instructions, could even be faster depending on the hardware you bring us than a 1517. In terms of communication, there are some limitations, but that's just the nature of it also being virtualized. So for instance, we can run like 128 devices at 1 millisecond from a Profinet standpoint, but we can't achieve things like IRT functionality because we don't have direct access to that hardware.
Now, just for our audience who may not be familiar with IRT, can either John or Bryan, can you guys explain when you utilize that part of Profinet protocol versus RT? When do you go to IRT? Because it is a different limitation. If you look at all the different CPUs, there's a different number for RT and IRT devices on Profinet. So can either of you tell me what devices would require IRT?
Typically, at least in my experience, IRT is used especially with high degrees of synchronization for things like motion, like decentral motion control.
Okay.
So in general, that just isn't something that the vPLC would be a good fit for, especially right now, because it's just not something we're capable of because we're virtualized. In this case, Siemens, like I said before, we're part of a larger portfolio. If that has a specific functionality you need and desire, we have a product for you that'll also achieve that. For the customer that specifically maybe doesn't have that need right now or can work around that need, but has let's say a high degree of IT oriented focus, this may absolutely be something that their department internally may be very interested in.
Yeah. The other point that Bryan made that I have had before was when they see the part number in TI Portal under the controllers labeled as a 1517, they associate the virtual PLC as having some performance related to the 1517. And like Bryan said, it is dependent on the hardware. The reason it's labeled 1517 is the size of the program, the memory footprint.
Like the quantity structures, like how big of a program you can have, things like that. Yep. In these cases, those are things also guaranteed by the type of CPU you're using. So in order for us to have a clear kind of market delineation between the different versions, we kind of have to keep with how our hardware already structures that.
Yeah. And that's what I think is pretty powerful and significant is a way that we do things is it's familiar to what they've done in the past. In our first iteration V19, there's the V7, the virtual 1517, but there's plans for other variants that are a smaller form factor.
Sure.
Right, like a 1515 or a 1511, which would of course be reduced in price, but also would have, like, for instance, a reduced program size, just like you would expect if you bought a real 1515 or a 1511.
Yeah, it's easy if you start big, you get big working. It's easy to put the software limits in so you can offer lower prices. I'm thinking with most program controller manufacturers, to get that high-speed coordinated motion or safety, there's a different CPU that you have to buy. So the basic CPU typically does some motion, but to get that coordinated access and all these advanced features, I'm not a motion guy by any stretch of imagination. I believe that's the same with and I'm talking hardware now, John. Isn't it? Don't I need is it a technology CPU to do the high-end motion? So the people doing so that's I can understand why that would be a different class than your standard vPLC. But Bryan, are there advantages here? Like, I'm trying to think of the use cases, right? Is there advantages here where I'm currently using maybe S715s, but I need lots of data out of that program? And it really is, it's difficult, even though some of the S7s come with a gigabit port. Is there advantages as far as getting data? Like by having it be in a virtual PLC, is there any, like it doesn't have to come down to pipe. I can get the data in that shared memory space in the virtual environment. Is there any advantages there?
Well, in this case, the advantage would be is that we are also located inside of Industrial Edge. Industrial Edge has plenty of applications for doing things like Cloud Connect, things like that.
Okay.
So in this case, the idea would be is that ideally you would take your 1517 that's already sitting there in Edge, use one of those cloud connectors to just directly take that data to where you want to process it in your process in your time frame. So in this case, the native nature of it being a co-located application would ideally suit it to allow you to kind of go ahead and put that data where you want it in the nature of in the fashion you want to use it.
Yeah, and I think expand on that. If you look at a simple machine that is just running I/O and you just have a standard PLC on that I/O controller, there's no need for all the data and all the connectivity. But like Bryan mentioned here, as soon as I become more advanced in my strategy and controls and automation, and I do want to use some of the things that reside in the Edge ecosystem or share more data, then putting the vPLC into my architecture like that, like Bryan just mentioned, is now I have the PLC connected to the place where all those higher end apps exist in that ecosystem. And I can start to, instead of trying to connect things down to here, I put this up there.
Yep.
There's a lot more value and benefit behind this that we'll get into in this call, but those are some of the first steps of thinking, why would I want to put or virtualize my PLC into that environment where the Edge ecosystem exists?
Yeah, and there's a lot of facilities where they have the PLC on every piece of the machine. So they have the whole plant, they have PLCs all over the place. And there are some facilities where they already co-locate the PLCs, and especially when they're doing redundancy and other things, or they have a master PLC that does master control for a big part of the plant in a central location, sometimes in the control room. So in those instances, it's an easy step from the physical to the virtual. But let me turn it back to you.
You can also do that with the vPLC. The strategy, a lot of times, it's dependent on the use case of the customer. But with Edge, you could actually have an Edge device at every machine.
Sure.
If that's your strategy and that's your vision, is you want that control right there at that machine A, that machine X. There's small enough packages where it can be realized that I put the Edge ecosystem right at the machine. And then there's other guys.
Practical with 1517 though. I mean, would we have to wait till the 1511V came out before that would be practical?
Why?
On smaller
it's
systems.
Also, yeah. Well, I mean, but that's the thing is that at some point, I mean, it just depends on the nature of what you're trying to control and how you want to control it, right? I mean, at some point, that's the thing, right? Yeah, sure, absolutely. If you're looking at specifically licensing cost, then absolutely you may want to wait. But if you're strictly looking to say, hey, can a virtual PLC achieve my solution? The point of our hardware independence is to give the end user the ability to determine how and where they want to do their control and in what manner.
Yeah, and I guess that's my own. When I think Edge, I think small, and that's not always the case. You may have an Edge application that is actually would you typically use like a larger S7 PLC. So that's because when I think of Edge, I'm thinking of small, compact, and expensive. But there are Edge applications that need a big PLC, right? For instance.
Sure.
Yeah. I feel like
in this case, let's think of Edge. Yeah, I was going to say, let's think of Edge in this case as the platform and less about specifically where it is. In this case, Edge is enabling us to offer a real-time control solution where you want it. That could be a blade server. It could be massive, or it could be like that nano or micro box or something that's sitting at your machine. I mean, the control is entirely up to the user's discretion to say, what am I wanting to control and how? We're just trying to give you the tools in the toolbox to achieve that.
Yep. Yeah. But at the same time, we got to be practical. I'm not going to spend, I don't even know how much it costs, but I wouldn't spend, let's say, $10,000 on a license and put it on a $500 industrial box, even if you could, right? To me, it doesn't seem like apples to apples there, right? And I think that's when you roll out a new product, typically you want to get the very serious customers who want to work with you closely on it first,
Sure.
and you don't want to do the broad shot everybody and their brother, right out the gate, because that can be kind of overwhelming with a brand new product, right?
Well, sure.
So
And right now we're in a limited sales release specifically with the
yeah,
customer. And our focus is again on trying to make sure you're right, that we get it correct. But the
yeah,
pricing is already set and you can visualize it for the 1517. In this case, it is $100 a month. I think $1,200 a year is what it's currently listed at. So that's currently for the 1517V specifically. This is the standard version that is currently at least visible.
with that pricing model, it brings up a whole new application of temporary sites, right? So how many sites where did you need control systems for? But it's a temporary site. It's going to be alive for 1 or 2 or 3 years. Maybe it's reclamation, maybe it's pollution, maybe it's just a construction site of some type, or a temporary site. Have you seen anybody approach you about, because of the pricing model, as it's a monthly charge, approaching you
Well,
for those type of applications, temporary
in this
applications?
case, by nature of it becoming a subscription only CPU,
Hmm.
those kind of things automatically kind of present themselves, right? Is on a
Uh-huh.
certain level, if you want to repurpose that license and do something else with it, that's fine. You haven't used any hardware specifically that you have
Yeah.
to end of life here. It's a subscription. At the point that your PLC and your control becomes software, it's up to you, your discretion, to determine how do I want to use this and what meaning. But it also means like, hey, I need another PLC to achieve this. That's a matter of buying another license. It's no longer a matter of, can I order this and get it here by tomorrow, or do we already have one of these in stock, right? I mean, the power is kind of all back to now the user to a degree, because that's what software gives us, right? It's just the ability to not have to be. We don't have to be determined on whether something's available right now. It simply is.
Yeah, and if you have multiple sites, yanking a license from one site to redeploy it on another is much easier than physically ripping the PLC out and testing it and then shipping
Yeah.
it to another site. So I can see advantages there too. Yeah.
Yeah, this is huge right here, Shawn. The fact that we're changing the whole way that we buy a PLC, ship a PLC, install a PLC, let the PLC sit in a plant for 10 years and deal with the plant after that, to what we are doing with the software app. I think if you can really open up your mind to think about what that means from a perspective of, I pay for the PLC $100 per month for the 3 years that it's in play, and then I move it to the next place where I want it, and it's automatically updated with the current hardware version of the vPLC and firmware version of the PLC.
Right.
I can definitely see customers saying, "I want to try this," right, when it's broadly available. But I don't want to have to be an IT guy. Do you have IPCs that you're selling that are vPLC ready, where all I have to do is buy I can buy the piece of hardware, the IPC, and then just give you an order for the license, and boom, I'm good to go?
In general, to my knowledge, any edge-enabled IPC, edge-enabled is the key. If it has edge, then we should be able to function on it.
Now, let's clarify that, because there's a lot of people saying they have edge products. This is a Siemens Industrial Edge
Yes,
capability?
correct. This is a Siemens Industrial Edge device. Now,
Okay.
whether that's a virtual device like the VM image, or it's one of our physical IPCs that actually, or there are competitive vendors also creating Siemens Industrial devices in this case. But again, if it's edge enabled and it has a version that we are capable of working with, and there's nothing, I don't mean that to say special, I just mean that it's a current version of edge, then it should just function. So
if I brought a brand new IPC from Siemens that had your Industrial Edge enabled, when this is widely available, I would be able to buy that license and go.
Yep.
Well, that's cool.
Or you could buy the Industrial Edge virtual device and do the same thing on your own hardware.
Okay.
Yep. Again, edge is the precondition. Beyond that, as an application, I don't have any ability to determine for you whether or not it meets your use case, because again, by nature of it being by nature of being hardware independent, fundamentally, it's at the user's discretion how and where I'm deployed and how I'm provisioned.
Yeah, and I think we haven't talked about the Siemens Industrial Edge portfolio really on the show, so I don't know much about it. So that's why I'm asking these basic questions.
Yeah, and Shawn, that's one thing I thought would be better is to do the vPLC first. So
Yeah.
we're basically taking this guy and
Yep.
virtualizing it so that we have this podcast and this dialogue first. But I'll get Chris and Adam and the other guys on here so we can look at a bigger picture of what the edge ecosystem exists. But I think this dialogue, the one thing that I hear a lot of people say is fit the application or the user. And a lot of times our users in the USA, in North America, are interested in the future, early adopters. They see the vision, they see the light, just like we did years ago when we saw the PLC being the ticket to relay cabinet replacement. And they're going to go and buy this 1517 and they're going to put it on their machine and they're going to show the rest of the doubters that they believe in this. And I hate, that's what I want to do is challenge anybody, even though we're in early release and sales release, our objective is for those guys that are passionate about getting on board with this kind of strategy and finding out what it means and reaching out to you or us so that they can say, hey, I know it's not production ready, or it is production ready, but I'm not production ready yet to deploy it, but I want to put it on my machine and I want to see what it all entails to embrace this. Because I really believe that this is the next best thing. I really do.
I definitely see that there is definitely a segment that is going to want to use this. This is a technology that is going to fit a need that exists already today. I still think we'll have S7-1200s and 1500s in the plants.
Correct.
But this is definitely opening up, especially applications that maybe were hard to do with hardware. It's really opening that up. And I think you'll have, like, a lot of times engineers will be like, look, I got the perfect product. I got the perfect process or application to test this on, because it's only going to run for 6 months. And it's, there's going to be a high-end PC out there anyways, or an IPC or an edge-enabled device out there anyways. And this would be the process for me to learn how to use this. And so I want to try it on this. And then, that's a way a lot of engineers, they learn about a product and try to understand. Maybe they're thinking some longer term stuff, but they want to, they got a product that's, maybe it's a project that's has more room for learning. It has a more open time schedule. So I can definitely see some of them reaching out to you guys and say, okay, hook me up. I was going to put a PC on this anyway, so let me get an edge enabled IPC. We'll do the vPLC. And I think the beauty here though is if I have an existing S7 program, I can bring it right into the vPLC. Am I correct?
You can. With Portal, you can just say right click, change device.
Yep.
And it just like any other conversion, it's gonna do its little magic. And that's the beauty of being Portal compatible, being a native PLC, is there's none of the kind of that brute work that you have to do in order to really change something from one thing into another. In this case, it's a native PLC. And by nature of that, you get all the advantages of being a native PLC.
Yeah. The other thing, like you mentioned there, Shawn, is when you learn how to deploy an industrial edge ecosystem into your machine, you don't have to learn the PLC, because the fact that our PLC is the native TIA Portal S7-1500. So you're going to be able to, if you're one of these customers that are using libraries and openness to generate your application and standards, you're going to be able to continue to use everything that you know as far as the function block and the faceplates coupled together inside the Siemens automation engineering tool. But now you get to virtualize it in this vPLC.
Now, I was going to say, so obviously there's a couple caveats here. Number one, there's no local I/O, right? So
correct.
I know a lot of customers, they just put a S7-1500 there and they use all ET200 SP or whatever, right? There's a lot of customers who do that already. A lot of applications where the PLC is the brain and everything's distributed, right? They're not using the ET200 MPIO locally. But of course, because this is a vPLC, there's no VIO that, unless you have virtual plant, then you could use virtual IO. But just joking. I think the other caveats would be, though, and I think we already covered them, is the vPLC is not yet a TPLC or an FPLC, right? There's no
Correct. Right.
fail-safe version, and there's no technology version of the vPLC. Not
There's
Gen 1
no
anyways.
technology version, and right now there's not any direct motion really accounted for.
Okay.
That's something we are looking into to determine what makes sense in the virtual PLC. Safety is actually already on our roadmap. That'll be part of our version 2.0 release. We have a safety CPU
excellent.
that will be released along with version 2.0.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I'd love to talk to you about that when you get farther along with that, because with safety, you have the 2 out of 1 and all the SIL things that you have to do. And it'd be interesting. I know other vendors have the software-based safety PLCs, but I'd love to dive into that deeper when it comes out. We probably a little too early to talk about that now since it's still on the roadmap. But
Sure.
Very interesting, because I think that's very interesting. The things you have to do to make a PLC fail-safe or safety PLC. Well, I guess so much, John. Why don't you chime in? What's on your thoughts?
Yeah, some of the other things that we make sure we want to clarify on this topic that we've had these discussions with other customers before is that it is a different model. You don't buy it and order it as part of that project budget. You're gonna do a project and you're gonna buy your I/O, your ET200SP I/O, and your drives and your other components related to the machine. But when you get ready for the control, you're gonna subscribe. It's software as a service. It's part of a edge ecosystem that we're going to get into is how do you deploy that from enterprise to the plant to the local on-premise device that's there. The cool part is how do you explain it, Brian, that after 5 years, this is still running hardware version 0.1 from 5 years ago with firmware XYZ that is not necessarily what I want in my current system. What's nice about the edge ecosystem is just like my iPhone, I get updates. I think that's another thing significant storyline is, to me, putting this in my control cabinet on my machine. This is my brains and my controls and my proprietary what's running my machine. I really like the strategy of moving that into something that I have more confidence that's managed in these other solutions and secure, and that my machine becomes more and more just strictly the maintenance guys maintaining the I/O, the inputs and the outputs, the 24 volts, the analogs, ensuring that the wire breaks are corrected and fixed, that the sensors are working properly, and that they can run the machine. So that's the kind of things that I see from an automation controls guy, sitting in the engineering department, the controls department, is that, hey, I take the risk out of it. Go ahead, Shawn.
No, I'm just like, to me, that's a big red flag. I wouldn't want anybody to push an update down to my vPLC unless I was ready to test it. How do you know it's not going to come down in the middle of production? And we know almost every firmware ever made has a new bug in it, right? Oh, it fixes bugs,
Sure.
But if those bugs aren't, being, affecting your process, then it's better to live with the bugs that don't affect your process than then get a new one which may affect your process. So to me, that's a red flag. So how does the engineer say, and maybe there's not even an engineer on site. So if let's say you do version 1.1 or whatever, how does the engineer have control over that to say, look, we got downtime scheduled, we're going to rev and we're going to test out, version 1.1 because we're running 1.0. I mean, I don't want to automatically push to me because
no, it's not.
The automation in this case would come from your IT department, right? They are the ones determining I need to push this. This is not Siemens saying we're going to update it. And in this case, like if you start looking at some of the IEVDs, you can start using VMs to your advantage and saying, maybe I want to A/B this. I want to just try it on this and roll back. Because again, the more IT oriented you get the advantages of some of the things that IT naturally does. Like, hey, I want to try this new update for Windows. Oh, it doesn't work the way I expect. Let me roll back. Well, now I can try that with my control solution as well, right? I mean, these are opportunities that the IT world's been doing for years, but has not really been achievable necessarily in the control space. And these are opportunities that you can only achieve once you virtualize, once you actually take, it's not just a software solution. It's truly saying, I no longer have a specific hardware dependence here.
Yeah, and I can definitely see if you're in a validated industry, you're never going to accept an update. Well, more than likely never accept an update. But for those applications where you're constantly updating them, this just makes that easier, because now it could be scheduled off to the IT department when they do the updates of your Windows operating system. So I can definitely see both sides, and it's good that it's not forced on you automatically. I see somebody in the chat as well, somebody from LinkedIn, and that's the value of a virtual commissioning simulation digital twin. It doesn't, it's interesting because it doesn't give me the name of who put that in there, but that's true. And digital twins is something we'll be talking about a lot this year as well, because digital twins is we're going to see more and more. We're even deploying them too at the automation school, digital twins. So a lot of people.
That is a different. So this is not a digital twin. This is actually.
No. This is a real PLC. Yes,
correct.
It's a vPLC.
Yeah,
yes.
That's another distinction that we always have to make with our customers on the first realm, is the fact that this is a virtual PLC representing the actual PLC controlling the line. Our digital twin storyline is around simulation and providing a virtual commissioning realm of validating the automation solution to the hardware solution or the mechanical design before we build the machine. And so everything we talk about, simulation, virtual commissioning, and digital twin, is digital twin of the product, digital twin of the machine, digital twin of the plant, and digital twin of my automation and my HMI, so that I can verify that I don't have to spend years doing commissioning like I've done in the automotive industry.
Well, that's the big advantage though, right? Because it is the same as the hardware. That's the advantage. So in a lot of cases, a lot of people who have their digital twin of their machine, they're actually connecting it to a real PLC because they don't want to work with the emulator simulator tweaks. They know that the emulator or simulator that's available for that particular PLC isn't 100%. So they typically will connect their, if they're really serious about this, they connect their virtual machine to a physical PLC because there's nothing virtual available from those other vendors. And I think that's the plus side with this approach, is the vPLC is the same as the hardware PLC. So you don't have to go out and buy a physical 1515 or 1517. You could use the VLP instead. And that's again where the subscription model seems like it's a huge advantage, because you're only going to be testing your virtual machine for so long, and then you're going to go into production, right? So whether you use a physical PLC or virtual PLC at that point, and again, starting with this 1517, you're getting the biggest guy, right? One of the biggest CPUs out there. You may learn through your testing, you only need a 1515 or a 1511, right? So I think that's the beauty of it being identical, the vPLC to a hardware PLC. Am I wrong?
For me, the beauty of it, yeah, absolutely. To me, the beauty of it is truly the compatibility, right? We're taking the known concept of the 1500 and virtualizing it. There are distinct advantages, as you're describing there, of being able to say, I want to just spin up another instance to try something, or to validate something, or to verify something. All of those things are possible, but that's just, to me, the nature of software, is that trying something, the amount of effort I have to put in to just saying I want to do this reduces, right? Because you don't have to have something physically on premises. In the same way that our simulation opportunities offer you a lot of chances to go ahead and fully think through an entire plant, idea, machine, whatever, the virtual PLC is enabling you to do that with your control even, right? You're now taking that and saying the same benefits I see from my simulation concept, my digital twin, I can now also take into, hey, I don't actually have to have physical hardware for my control concept. And that to me offers a distinct opportunity.
Yeah, it's definitely, I'm glad we had you guys on to talk about this. It's definitely a very interesting topic, and it'll be see what the other vendors are doing to try to catch up to you over time in this area to see what their position is. But I think we have a large Siemens audience. And I know that they would be very interested in this concept. Do you have, Bryan, is there a date where you'll be opening up the vPLC to a wider audience, or are you still in those early days where you don't have that yet?
No. Right now, at least our goal is to do a general public release along with our version 2. So this will be the one that coincides with, I guess, V20. Okay. So that'd be realistically into this year. The goal is to do a general public release at the end of this year.
Oh, that's
So.
cool. All right. So not too far away. Excellent. Now, if somebody has questions, and I'll throw it back to you, John, if you have anything to add. But first, if somebody has questions on what we're talking about today, right? Because I'm no expert at this. But, this is really only the second time I've ever talked about it. Who would they reach out to? Do they reach out to their local Siemens rep, or if they want to find out more about the vPLC?
No, I mean, you can reach out to myself or Chris Liu is our Edge ecosystem product manager. But basically, if your audience wants to reach out to you and get started with you, you can come to us, as you always do. I think what we'll do is have a couple more of these tech talks on this topic so that we can expand the understanding of, clarifying some of the things that people have questions as to where it fits in the different applications. And we'll put more content there on this when you do the podcast, other links and information, so that we can broaden the understanding. And I think it is an interesting opportunity to get more of an understanding to the application space and the benefits that come with this kind of strategy. And again, I get passionate about the vPLC, just like I do some of the other topics, but I never take the attitude that this replaces everything that we're doing today. You're right, and everyone's right. We're still going to have our distributed controller that we put on certain machines. We're still going to have the 1200. There's a future 1200 in the works. We're still going to have these types of strategies. There's not an intent that the vPLC replaces the run rate core business that customers apply to the machines, but it's an extremely unique opportunity to apply this kind of vPLC technology with all the standard engineering tools like Step 7 and TI Portal and my standards that I have, and augment my solution so that I'm growing into the future applications. And I see the ecosystem, you've got an app for the PLC, you've got an app for the HMI. Picture what other apps I need in an edge ecosystem for my automation solution that I don't need on my plant floor, or I don't need in technology. And the other thing that I like to promote is think about the openness of this kind of strategy. Is that in an edge ecosystem where the apps can be created by anyone or any vendor, any supplier, it really makes my automation solution more open.
Yeah, and I'm just going to jump in here quickly. After the show, it might be a day or two, we will add links under the show. If we may have maybe not said something clearly, we'll clarify that under the show. So this live show will stay on the platforms it's on, all 5 platforms. We will add it to we'll add a podcast, but I just wanted to throw this out there. These are early days of Tech Talks, and so we may not get everything right the first time. So we'll definitely, if you have questions, you can post it on on any of the 5 platforms we're on, as well as at theautomationblog.com. So if you have a question about something we said, or if you need a clarification, or if we have to put a clarification or links to different documents and online collateral, we'll do that on these in the description of the show. I think all those sites let me do this except for X, Twitter. They won't let me edit the live stream afterwards, so just go right to theautomationblog.com to see all the updates. But with that, let me turn it back to you guys for, looks like we have 5 minutes left. Any final thoughts? Anything else you want to cover?
Go ahead, Bryan.
No, absolutely. I can only reiterate what John said there exactly. The vPLC is part of our existing and very extensive portfolio. I think for a lot of customers, it'll be something that they're very interested in just to understand it better. But I think for certain specific customers and for especially some of our end user customers and certain types of OEMs, I think this will offer an opportunity that they're going to have to evaluate, because it may, like you said, change the nature of how you approach some types of automation. Now, this isn't like, I mean, again, the point of making like a 1500 virtualized was taking something we already understood that the market understands and truly offering it where you want it. And in this case, the offering the hardware independence is truly kind of that's really the nature of this, right? That's not to say that we're not going to continue iterating and offering different opportunities within that. But the goal here and the starting point was to say, let's virtualize this and then figure out what the next thing is. To me, that I'm highly passionate about this project because I think it's just clear that the market wants it and needs it. So
I have. Yep. The other thing that I want to say is I hear a lot of people talk about the OEM or the end user and the application, and it's been my experience that a lot of times that it's an individual, it's a person. There's a guy that sees it, that works for a certain company and gets on board and takes that company into the future. And there's times where there's the guy that doesn't see it. And that's another thing that I get pretty excited about is when you're having a customer engagement talking about some of these technologies, and there's a guy in the room that sees the way of the future. And it gets pretty exciting to see the fact that they see some value in the strategy behind all this other stuff. So
yeah. Products are kind of like puzzle pieces. They fit some people, they don't fit others.
yes,
That's just, it's the same with every product that's on the market, whether it be a car or a appliance or a PLC. And so different people see the advantages of different things. I definitely see this, and I don't know why so many people think, is this replacing the hardware? I've never thought that. It's like this adds just another arrow in your quiver of great products. And the thing I like about it is, and again, if another vendor did the same thing, it would be the same advantage. I can take my existing S7-1500 program, and now I can use it with the vPLC when and if I need it. And I think that's the best, because I'm not adding another. Yeah, exactly. I'm not adding another. There's not a special version of TIA Portal, or you just have to have the good a later version, but 19 or 20. But in any case, well, guys, unless you have something else to say, I'm going to wrap up. Are you guys good?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to really thank
great
you,
to talk to everybody. Yeah.
Bryan. Really appreciate it. It was nice meeting you yesterday. Great having you on the show, especially on episode 1. This is still early days. I'm still learning how to use everything. John, always great to have you back. Can't wait to do that V19 with you. I'm going to ask you guys to hold on for a second as I close out the show, if you don't mind. And I just want to thank you. Let me know what you think about these tech talks. I've actually designed them to be right before lunchtime. So if somebody needs to do something at lunch, they can watch it. Or if you want to watch it during lunch, the whole live stream will be done and you can catch it at lunchtime. So hoping to do these every Tuesdays. I know my son's getting married in a couple of weeks, so I won't be able to do it towards the end of the month. But in any case, please give us feedback. Do you like this format? Let me know what you think. And when we get the podcast up, I'll let you guys know on the morning show or on the automation podcast. And we do have the next automation show is on Thursday, and we have a new episode of the automation podcast dropping tomorrow afternoon. So with that, I'm going to wish you all an awesome day. Stay courageous, stay fearless. And until next time, peace.